And we're Hey, everybody. This is a fantastic Friday, and you are here with the ladies of all things new. Yes. Can y'all see Theresa? Listen, with her blue hair today. We are so excited. We're the ladies of all things new, and we are so glad to be here on this Friday. Can you turn that music off?
Which is my demand.
Theresa got carried away. She was rocking. She got her hair. She got her fist up.
She's stuck.
She's ready.
I'm ready today.
Yeah. So listen, before we get started, of course, we want to make sure that we do a couple of things. We're going to do some housekeeping, and then we're going to jump right into it because we have a special guest. Are y'all excited for our guest?
Very excited for our special guest.
We're excited for our special guest. So I'm about to do some housekeeping, but before I do me a favor, share this.
Let me share.
Live. Everybody just share it.
Right
sharing. Tell everybody this is going to be a fantastic conversation with a wonderful, wonderful guest. We also, as we always do at the top of every show, we want to give a special shout out to the founder of YLC TV, our wonderful producer, Mark Moore Jr.
The one and only.
And also, we want to thank our sponsor, Bowers Enterprises. They are there for all of your financial service needs. So make sure that you go to their website, and whatever needs that you have that's related to finances, they're going to be there to help you. So thank you, Bowers Enterprises.
Thank you, Bowers.
So before we get into it, we got the ladies here. Ladies, you want to introduce yourself real quick? Or
Theresa, channeling my Angela Davis today, / Malcolm X / Louis Farrakhan. Holla at me. Call me.
MLK.
Okay. Channeling Black Panthers today. I'm channeling Black Panthers.
Love it.
Pray for her, y'all. Pray for her. Hey, guys, I'm Joya Laurie, and I'm challenging Joya Laurie. That's who I am. You don't want none of that either.
That's going to be difficult.
Hey, everybody. I'm Dana.
All right. Well, we've got the ladies here, Theresa, Joya, Dana, and myself, Dr. Matisa. I'm so excited to be here, or Matisa, whichever you prefer. It's been a challenging few weeks. It's been a challenging 2020. If we can be honest, if you all joined us last week, we had a pretty raw conversation. Raw emotions. I thought Theresa was going to come through the computer. I mean, it was just
almost.
Listen, but what I loved about it, Theresa, is you were really expressing what a lot of people were feeling.
Yeah.
And we were able to kind of get that out and talk about it. And this week, we're going to do a part 2 to our racism and riots conversation, but we're going to bring in special guest, Pastor Findley Jr., who's the senior pastor of Kingdom Fellowship Christian Center in Louisville, Kentucky, which is one of the epicenters of the protest today. I don't know if you all know that or know this, but today would have been Breonna Taylor's 27th birthday.
And
one woman who was killed there in her home by police.
So crazy.
Recently, there was another man who was killed, Mr. David McAtee, and I'm sure Pastor Tim is going to, give us all the information on what's going on there. But let's go ahead and invite him in so we can start this conversation.
Yes.
Hey.
That's Tim.
Hey, everybody.
Hey,
Glad to be on this show. This is Theresa.
How are you?
Like that.
If you need somebody to ride with you, I'm with you, Pastor.
Glad to be on. Good to see everybody.
Good to see you. Well, speaking of being down to ride with you, I'm so excited to have you here, Pastor Tim. Pastor Tim is not only a senior pastor, but he's a community leader and he's an activist. He has been leading much of the protests there in Louisville, Kentucky. So, Pastor, we just wanted you to kind of open up. Tell us what you're seeing, what's happening in Louisville. Pastor Tim was actually arrested a week or so ago, peacefully protesting, so he knows firsthand what it looks like there. So, Pastor Tim, again, thanks for being here.
I was arrested for the right reason this time.
Oh,
this time.
This time it was righteous.
What's funny, when we saw you on the ground, Pastor Tim, Lauren said, I think Pastor Tim has been in that position before, so I'm sure he's like,
he was like, this is nothing.
I was like, that's a good placement of the knee there, buddy. I tell you, you've done some work.
Well, tell us what's been going on in Louisville.
Yeah, well, just you know, as you mentioned before, we had a young lady, Breonna Taylor, who lost her life, who was murdered by the police, and I don't say that lightly. There's been so much that has happened around this, so much that has been uncovered from this no-knock warrant that they obtained and rushed into her house in the middle of the night with her and her boyfriend, and subsequently shot her 8 times. She was killed. There was information that came out that they tried to, really kind of push to the public that this was some kind of drug circle and all that kind of stuff. All of that has been summarily dismissed and found to be untrue. So that in the midst of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and then in the time of protesting Breonna Taylor, there was gatherings, as there is expected to be, in certain parts of town, in her community. And on one particular night, the National Guard was dispatched, and that was a terrible mistake by our mayor, but sent the National Guard in a very provocative way into this area that was not protesting, but a lot really was just a hangout. That's just, if Matisa, you've been to the west end of Louisville, and you know it's a very community-oriented hangout type space. Yeah. And we were told, because I was actually there pretty much all day that next day, but there was and a man who's very much well known in the neighborhood lost his life at the hands of the police officer as people were already grieving beyond Breonna. What's crazy is that they were telling us in a few of the boards that I sit on, they were telling us that he shot at the police. That's been the information. Well, as of today, we were able to get our hands on, I think it was yesterday actually, the New York Times did an investigative report, and I put that on my page today. And it gives different perspectives of Mr. McAtee, who was out, he's operating a restaurant, who was feeding both people that were gathered and the police. He is there, and it's clear on the video that he does not know what's going on. They came down and immediately started shooting first rubber bullets at the crowd and at people without any provocation. And then one particular officer went to her sidearm and again killed Mr. McAtee. So again, it's happening here in Louisville. It's happening there right outside of Atlanta. It's happening in Minnesota. But the truth is, I think it's indicative of the protests that we're seeing in all 50 states. And I keep saying, I don't say minorities much anymore because white women are minorities. Right. I don't say people of color anymore as much because not all people of color are dealing with what we're dealing with. Right. I'm saying Black people and allies are sick of this brutalization from law enforcement. And it's not just law enforcement. I'm telling people all the time that this is just one branch. This is just one tentacle of this racist structure. So across the board, it's issues. But police brutality right now seems to be sort of in the scope of everyone. And it's just enough is enough.
Well, I know the other ladies have some questions. I wanted to just ask you one more, and then I'll certainly ask them to pose questions as well. But, we're at a point now, I think we're 10 days into it, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of the protests and everything, and you're seeing them across the world. This is one of the first times that we've seen protests in all 50 states, I think 100 countries. So clearly, people are focused on this. I was able to go out and protest yesterday. I know you've been protesting quite a bit, leading protests. I guess my question is, why do you think there's so much attention on this now? Because we could name countless people over the last few years, and really since the history of this country, of lynching and maiming and torture and murder. Right. Why do you think we're seeing this now? And then do you think it's a tipping point for real change?
I absolutely think it's a tipping point for real change. And I think, and to answer your question, I think one of the reasons why we're seeing so much attention now, this has been going on for some time. I think Will Smith talked about how racism isn't new, it's just being recorded. It's just cell phones. But I think when you, it's almost like a perfect storm of events. You have an absolutely racist, inept president. You have a racist, inept governmental structure, and you have the rising of young people who don't have the same sort of sensibility, so to speak, or patience of those who have come after them. And I think they have galvanized in many, many ways what we're seeing today. And I think it's very, very important for everyone to understand that this is not just a secular issue, that honestly, it's the church and it's Christians in many different ways, whether it is, I said to someone today, we need people on Broadway and the boardroom. In many different ways, we've got to be going forward and attacking this sin, this wickedness. And I think now we've been given this opportunity, not to mention we're coming out of a 100-year pandemic, which was also affecting Black people disproportionately. So it's caused a perfect storm of issues that have caused us now to say, this opportunity, we cannot let it slip. We've got to seize this moment. And one of the things that I'm doing is that I don't want to take the same approach. And this is what I just had a pastor to call me last night. If I called his name, Elder Matisa, he would know who he is. But he called me and said, I want you to be careful. I want you to be very careful, because the approach that you're taking is dangerous, but that is the approach that needs to happen. My approach is, I'm not going to protest in Black neighborhoods. I'm not going to protest in the downtown situation, because back in the 60s and 70s, the downtown area was a symbol of commerce, of political legislative seats, and it still is to a degree, but cities have expanded. It's not the same feel. So what I've decided is I'm going to take the protest, I'm going to take faces that look like me, that make people uncomfortable. I'm going to take them right to your neighborhood, where you sit, and it's in two protests. I've gotten the attention of the entire LMPD. They are literally following everything I do, and that's a great thing.
You got their attention very quickly.
Very quickly.
I was watching the protest that somebody was doing live when you were in front of St. Matthew's Mall. I think it took 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Wow.
20 minutes. And it's just, or even we went to, and we made sure we socially distanced. We made sure that we were very peaceful. As a matter of fact, I have a great group of 50% saved men to come with me because if there's anyone comes to our protest and tries to hijack the message or start something that's not peaceful, I told them, with all the 50% anointing that you have, I want you to remove them without prejudice, really, because we're not going to have that narrative be hijacked.
That's so good.
But we went out to a very, very white space, and we began to do the protesting, and we found out they began all the major stores around us. Literally in the middle of the day, a call went out. So the word is being put out there, and where we're going today, Matisa, if you look on my post, where we're going today is as ivory as they come.
Wow. Well, I got some hot spots for you if you want to collab. I got some places y'all can go.
I said this on the news, and somebody said, "Why would you say it on the news?" I said, I have boundless creativity when it comes to where I can show up to where you don't want me. There are thousands of places I'm going to show up that you're going to, so.
That's
and
good.
People just like taking a long walk. They love it. We had 15. I just see on my post, I said, I think I'm going to take a long stroll today here. We started with 15 people. The last time we probably had about 60.
Wow.
And I'm thinking today, we're going to probably have even more. And I've gotten smart. I'm a strategist. So in the crowd, I'll have a few attorneys. In the crowd, I'll have a few media personalities that won't be there to take. They're going to be there. So, we're going to make sure we're going to be in this for the long haul.
That's good. That's good.
Well, I have a question. Pastor Findley, well, somebody did ask a question earlier, and I'll address it in a second. But last week, I was really upset. It was my first time even talking about everything that was going on. And so there were so many people responding, like, as a saint, you can't, really protest or riot. And I'm not saying I was going to riot, but I definitely would want to be a part of a protest. But everyone was saying you need to have a strategic approach. And it seems like, and you just said you're a strategist. So what would you recommend at us to take our anger and all this frustration that we have? Like, what is a practical approach that you take? And you're not new to this, you're true to this. You've been doing this far before it ever even hit the news. And what's your thought process, or what do you do for your approach to respond?
Well, I would say first, and that's good, Theresa. I would first say I would challenge anyone that says Christians don't protest or shouldn't protest. I would challenge that person. As a matter of fact, I would go a step further than that and say, I need you to define for me what a riot is.
Right.
Because riot seems to be subjective. For some people, a riot is, again, being in a place you shouldn't be loud. Some people, I think that we need to define what that is. But then the other thing I would push back on is that you have to have a strategy. I don't think you always have to have a strategy. I think you have to have a purpose.
Okay.
And I think you need to have with that purpose, if you're asked, what do you want to see come from this? You should be able to clearly articulate that. But when you say a strategy, if you say a group of us are going to go somewhere, and that in a way is a strategy, but if you say a group of us want to go somewhere and just say her name, that doesn't take a whole bunch of planning and all this kind of stuff. And I appreciate those who are community organizers and planners, because I think that in a lot of ways, they're so valuable. They're very valuable. On yesterday, we had, while I was at another meeting, we had a group here in the city, a very well-known group that had riot training in our fellowship hall. Because again, we want to be a church that supports other worthy organizations.
That's good.
But I would say, generally, when I go into something like this, if I'm going to have a strategy, it's going to be strategizing where I'm going, how long I'm going to be there, and then what outcomes I'm hoping to see come from this. That's generally my strategy. When it comes to planning, and I may do a route. If we're going to walk, I'm just one that I like to be creative. So I like to go into a neighborhood and go into a multi-million-dollar neighborhood and just have a bunch of Black people stand on the sidewalk and look at the houses. Don't say nothing.
Wow.
Don't say anything. Just stand there. And I want you to see that we're being affected. So those are the kind of things that I think is necessary. And that's immediate. But I would also tell people, we don't want to have that and only that and not address bigger issues, like voting registration, the census, reform. All of those kind of things have to go together and be a part of this larger picture.
Got it.
I have a question really quick. So you did state something about, I'm not the one to articulate how I really feel what's going on with this. So I'll tell somebody they stupid, they ignorant, and I've done it.
I see how your hand, because when your hand goes up, I know it's through.
How about this? I'm like, you know what? You're going to get told off. You're going to know I told you off, and it's going to be off. So at this point, you're stupid, ignorant. So I need to know, like, what books or articles do you recommend that we should read just to... Yes, good. Okay. That we should read. And because I had a conversation with a coworker last night. And she was talking to one of my residents, and he's a white guy, right? And he's like, I don't know why they're televising the funeral. Do these people have somewhere to go? And of course I wanted to go in like, let me tell you something, sir. You already got one foot in the grave. And I'm like, I don't do that. I do this job, all that stuff, right?
The views expressed are not those of YOC.
You just passed the test. Come on to our group. You'll fit right in. Come on, you passed the test.
I knew it.
You passed the audition. You're in. Let's go.
That's hilarious.
But I need to know, I want to really be able to like express how I feel. And I really want to, not only just these type of conversations, but I do want to know like some articles, some books that I really need to get and dig into, so that when that time comes again, because I know it's going to continue to come, that I can give them facts as well. Not just how I feel, but facts as well. So,
and the reason I was doing that in the beginning, because I think that's the part that we often miss. I think that's the part that we often miss. And I know that's the part that many non-Black people are missing, because they're not up on history. They don't understand how this connects to what has been in our 401 year history.
Right.
So anytime I get on a program like this, I'm always going to bring books because I think it's so important. And it's not just books, but it's authors, people.
Sure.
Last night I was on with Bishop Moore and Mark, and it was a great Zoom. It was entertaining, but it was a young man that was on there that, again, I said the same thing to. You got to educate yourself. You can't just Google some articles. So there's two books that I brought today, I have here, that I think are so important. And one I kind of plugged last night. The first one, and I think this is absolutely necessary reading for anyone who is serious about understanding what's happening today and what's been happening to the African American community, and that is White Rage.
White Rage.
White Rage
And who is it by?
Carol Anderson, Dr. Carol Anderson. The Unspoken Truth of Our Racial Divide. I've gotten to hear her speak on it a couple times. The book is brilliant. I'm gonna tell you why. Because it chronicles in history every single time there is Black progress. There is always a subsequent response from white America. White rage. We have Donald Trump because he is the rage fruit from Barack Obama. When there was Reconstruction, the Black codes, Jim Crow, everything is always a response. So even when we get legislation, even when we get civil rights, even when we get these things, there is always a response that may come in an undertone that is meant to say, you may have gotten this, but we gonna do this. So I would say White Rage is extremely important. And then Manning Marble, it is Race, Reform, and Rebellion. I would say, Theresa, this is one, it's really good. Because the truth of the matter is,
what's the name of it again, Pastor?
Race, Reform, and Rebellion.
Okay.
And again, it talks about what I've drawn from the book is that when you talk about reform, you're not going to have reform until you have rebellion, until there is a complete revolt from what is going on in a larger sense. That's why I can't come out and just summarily dismiss the rioting. Don't get me wrong, the looting, I get it. Don't tear stuff up. But the truth is, I'm looking at the bigger picture. I refuse to be drawn into a few glass windows being broken and not addressing the glass ceiling on Black people.
That's so good.
I refuse to deal with the fact that our poverty-stricken neighborhoods are constantly riddled with houses that are boarded up. But white America cannot take downtown being boarded up.
Right.
Because, again, we've got to understand there has to be rebellion. So, again, I'm not advocating for looting at all. But I have to get a definition on rioting. I got to get a definition on rebellion, because I don't see us having reform until we have that level of righteous indignation.
Yeah.
You know, the Bible says, y'all said it last week, be angry, but sin not.
Yeah.
It didn't say anger was wrong.
Right.
It's what you do, how you channel your anger. And your anger ought to be channeled in a way that challenges these systemic oppressive systems that are absolutely put in place. If you do a study on redlining, it will infuriate you. There's another book by Ibram Kendi, I believe, and it's called Stamped from the Beginning.
Oh, wow.
And it talks about how none of this, and I try to tell my daughter this and others, y'all, this ain't new.
Right.
This is something that's been going on for some time. And then we won't even get into evangelical Christianity that was the engine behind a lot of this stuff.
Right.
Well, that's what I wanted. That's really a good segue, because and Dana, if you have a question, jump in here. But I wanted to just ask this because Pastor Tim just segued that. You know, we hear a lot and talk a lot. You're talking, of course, my language, because that's sociology and economics, all of the stuff that,
Matisa,
yes.
That social psychology class that I'm taking, why would you let me do that? You should have stopped me. Because now
he woke. It's gonna be woke.
Now I'm just completely. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no,
you should have said, Pastor, right now, don't do it. Right now, you're not in a headspace. Now I just feel like I feel like every commercial is manipulating us. Go ahead.
But doesn't it give you insight? We need to really take more things like that and read the book that you've been recommending, because a lot of us are in a little bubble. And
Yes.
I wanted to bring that around to the conversation about white evangelicals and racial reconciliation. Where is there a need for us to have another racial reconciliation movement for us to move forward? What is the role of evangelical Christians? What's your thinking around that?
I have an issue with the term reconciliation, racial reconciliation, because if the truth be told, I don't need to bring anything to the table to repair anything. This is, and I want to be very, very clear when it comes to white evangelicalism. It is at the heart of what is destroying, what is brutalizing, and what is complicit in the loss of life and the oppression of Black people. The silence, all of those things. So when you talk about, the reconciliation aspect of it, what I would say is this. I think white people need to do what James Baldwin said. You need to face in order before you can fix.
Come on.
You need to face some things. So instead of having, and until we keep dancing around things that are obvious and still dealing with you being oblivious, we're never going to make any headway, because we're going to spend more time trying to explain racism to people who refuse to open up their eyes and see what's going on.
Right.
It's almost like with somebody with their fingers in their ear going la 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 la, and you're trying to explain something to them. They don't want to do that. And there's got to be change. And I know that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but it is what it is. And Jesus speaks about false unity. He speaks about false peace. And again, that's why he said, I come to bring the sword. I'm going to set father against son, mother against daughter. I'm going to set all those, because when you embrace the true character of Christ, it's going to cause a line of demarcation, and you're going to have to face some things. And I believe in the household of faith, Jesus is talking about fathers and sons, mothers and daughters. In the household of faith, in the family of Christ, there's going to be some division, because we are trying to go forward in unity without dealing. And let me also say this, and I promise you I'm done. Listen, you can't have no conversation about healing until we talk about reparations at all.
That's good. Somebody's been asking that question. Yes. What do you think?
You can have no conversation about healing until we talk about reparations. And don't tell me America can't do it, because guess what? During that pandemic, they somewhere found $2 trillion.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna tell you, I don't want to have conversations with anybody until we bring to the table this country. When someone says y'all can go back to y'all's country, I built this.
Right.
My ancestors built this.
Right.
And through the cotton industry, through all of those different things, the bedrock of this financial engine called America was built on the backs by the Black commodity. And until we deal with that, there is no conversation on healing.
Well, two other books I wanted to bring in really quickly, and Pastor Tim, you probably have read these or heard of these. One book is White Fragility, and then the second book is Racism Without Racists. And both of those speak to this idea that there are people who are contributing to racism and racist ideology every day, but every day. I'm not a racist. White Fragility talks about, white people not wanting to deal with it. To your point, don't want to acknowledge race at all because it's uncomfortable and it's going to point the finger, largely back at them. And so a lot of what we're seeing, I think, of people just closing their eyes to what's going on is they don't want to acknowledge the fact that they're really participating in racist, either racist or privileged in a racist society.
Right. I actually recommended the Racism Without Racists last night to our brother on the call.
Oh, cool.
Actually, yeah. So, but both of those, that White Fragility is really good. That should be necessary reading for all of my Caucasian brothers and sisters. And what's funny is you have a lot that are very much, they're conscious of it. Before I got on the call with you all, Pastor Josh Hart from All Nations Louisville stopped by the church. And we had a long conversation about next steps. And we're going to be coming together next week, pulling teams together to deal with voter registration. and really starting to mobilize around that. So, this is not to attack white people, but this is to attack whiteness, privileged whiteness.
That's
so
good.
I have a question, or maybe it's a question. So I've been reading and looking at articles, but like from Louis Farrakhan. And so I agree with a statement that he made, because it makes me so angry that, we can't get the attention of people to, even sit down and have a conversation with us until we're tearing up their buildings or tearing up their downtown or, doing stuff that they're like, oh no, there's an unrest with the people. But Louis Farrakhan said, the Bible in this book, I don't think it was a King James version, but he was like, in this book it says, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But he said, until we hit them where it hurts. And I would say, like, in my mind, and I'm so glad I'm saved and I have the Holy Ghost, I would have been on the porch of the police officer that killed him. I would be on the porch because we can get their address. Text him. I work in real estate.
Well, trust me.
They
what?
Crosses
They actually
they put nooses in our
somebody
trees.
found out where the mayor lives at and actually posted it, and they're at the mayor's house. And I'm like, Lord, matter of fact, they're at the mayor's house, and they found out where his mom and dad live.
Whoa.
Oh my goodness.
So
and they from old school. They probably had some slaves.
No, you know what? And it wasn't. I'm sorry, it wasn't here. I'm saying there was a article that I saw where they were doing a live stream in front of the mayor's mother and father.
Wow.
And I'm thinking about what you said, Theresa, like, wow.
But until you do that, they don't, it's like, as long as, we spank their hand and it's like, oh, we go on, it's like, this is an injustice. And, we do our little march and we're done. But when we burn this country down, then they're going to be like, oh, okay, wait, let's see what the black people want. Let's sit down. But we have to go that hard until we have at least a conversation, because right now they're talking at us like, well, we're not, the country, we've come a long way. If you listen to your president, a long way from racism. We've grown so much. No, we haven't, sir. And it starts in your home, and that being the White House.
But did you hear, Theresa, that this is really gonna make you mad? The president said today.
I know, Jesus.
What?
He said George Floyd is probably looking down right now at the drop in unemployment, and he's probably happy right now at what he sees.
Yeah, Matisse, I just saw that on my way to get on this call, and I said I wasn't.
All right, guys, let's go. Come on, go down. Let's get
I was
listen. And to Theresa's point, when I heard that, I was going ahead and like, let me find some matches because it's just going there.
Jesus.
But you know what? Again, that just it highlights where we are. I put this post up a few weeks ago. 96% of Black women black voters. 96% of women Black voters voted against Donald Trump. 96%. And now we're in a point to where we're seeing what I think Black women were trying to warn us of. We're seeing the absolute destruction of and I won't say race relations. I don't know if we ever had really race relations, but he's pulling out so many different hidden things that are now, we went from covert to overt. So the question becomes now with this absentee, or not the absentee, but the mail-in balloting, and that's so complicated. I just see this thing being set up already. And I'm telling people, another 4 years of Donald Trump, he's going to now have he's going to roll back some things. There's going to be things that happen legislatively that are going to be fundamentally destructive to Black people. Yeah.
That's so crazy. So my thing is, people say, like, they're actually saying he could get reelected, and I would die the death of many angels if that happened. Like, I couldn't fathom that people would allow this to happen again.
First of all, die the death of many angels is dope.
So dumb.
That is so dope.
I think my mother used to say that. I don't know. It got to be in the Bible. I would die the death of many angels. It would be a travailing. I'm just saying, I couldn't fathom he'd get back in. I couldn't.
Well,
it's not an impossibility, though.
It's not. Impossible.
It's not. And here's the thing. We will not vote him out because of our candidate on the right or on the left.
Right.
It'll be because, again, we mobilize and he has to do something that's catastrophic and just implode. which
Has
I
he
don't know
not
what
already?
that would be.
What
Well,
else
and that's
is
the
there?
thing, because I think the way that he handled coronavirus was just, I thought,
Or
this is going to take them down.
Right.
But again, they continue to do what they do. I'll
Well,
tell you
let me
something
say
I'm
this,
planning
though.
on doing.
But do you hear when he says it? Like he feeds it. He's a strategist. Unfortunately, you have to give it to him. He gets on his. We've done the best job out of everyone in the world on handling coronavirus.
Right.
So his crazy counterparts or the ones coming out the trailer park is like we've done the best job, and they don't even know. Read the news. We did the worst job. But he's speaking this rhetoric that my numbers are high. People love me. No. When Twitter fact checked him, he tried to get social media shut down. And I'm like,
I'm gonna tell you,
he's a liar.
Yeah, one of the things I'm really looking to do, just in terms of next steps, even in preparing for the general election, is really put. And I don't, we're sort of strategizing how we can do this, but put the pressure on evangelical churches that have large bases of Black people, because what has happened, and I think about the Dave Chappelle stand-up, where he talked about how sometimes white people will fiercely protect who they vote for. Yeah. Like, how we don't just talk about our social security number. We don't just give out our social security number.
Right.
That's sort of how they are with their ballot.
Yeah.
I think the time has come, because and this is so serious, that we need to know, who are you standing with? Where are you standing? Who are you voting for? Because I'm going to have a major issue with churches, evangelical or Baptist, Pentecostal, wherever, that say that they love all people, and they're standing with this man who is absolutely destroying so many different things. So I'm going to be working to call on that carpet.
Well, and I'm going to say two things. First of all, y'all share. We've got a great group of people who are watching, and we've got this last bit of our segment left. So share. I want to hear from Dana, because you've been largely quiet. I'd love to hear your voice.
I was about to mention something about that.
Let me just say really quickly, one thing that I said last night that I also think is important.
Dana.
I know.
Dana knows why I'm looking at her.
Dana has been extremely quiet.
She knows why I'm looking at her about Donald Trump.
Oh!
I don't like Donald Trump, and I
not you.
I know. I'm
not you.
Talking about
you know what I'm talking about, though.
It's so disappointing. I know what you mean.
Let me say this. I think, to your point, Pastor, and this is going to be short, I also believe that white pastors who get it need to pull other white pastors who don't get it.
Yeah.
People listen to one another. They're hearing from us all the time. I think it should be incumbent upon, again, white pastors who get it to look at their counterpart and say, listen, no, we need to make sure that we're, in this together and have those conversations.
Right.
So, yeah. So Dana, Dana, thoughts, question? What would you say?
I think I'm just kind of all talked out, but I think I'm more observing in this moment, because I realize there's a lot of reading I need to catch up on, but I'm more interested in next steps, because it's all great to be angry. It's all great to be, in this emotional state, but I want to know what we're going to do. And I want to know that what we do is going to bring a lasting change. So I think I'm more in a reflective mode. I'm not as talkative this time, and I'm sorry about that, but I love all the information being presented. And one of the things that I really wanted this show to do today was to give people outlets to throw their support to. So if you're in the Louisville area, pay attention to Pastor Tim's post so that you know where to go take a stroll. If you're in Atlanta, follow Dr. Matisse and find out where we're going to pray and protest, because I do like that I'm seeing protests across all of the United States. I do like that this is not just something that was dropped by the next news cycle. I'm glad to see that people are angry and frustrated and actually doing something about it. And I just want to make sure that people are doing positive, productive things.
Well, that's a great segue. Go ahead, Pastor. I was just going to say, and I'm going to let you be unleashed. That's going to be the last of the segment. So thanks, Dana, for that segue, because the goal is to talk about all that we have, but then to sort of leave it on, these are next steps. And even if they're not specific to a city, they still, we still can point people to some positive strategies and solutions. So for our last 20 minutes, that's what we'll kind of talk about. So Pastor Tim, what were you going to say?
Well, to that point, and I'll keep it for that last segment, but I think that there are some clear next steps that everyone can take, and you don't have to be mobilized by a group. There are some clear things that we can do everywhere, because police brutality, for instance, is an issue everywhere. And there are things that, while some people watching this may have never been affected by it, you may never have seen it, you may have never known anyone that's been affected by it, just by what we're seeing on social media, the news ought to spur us enough to take certain steps, and be consistent with it. I know that sometimes people really, and I've had this happen here with the walks that I'm taking. People want to be a part of a movement and a group, and that's a great thing. But I don't want us to ever forget that we have individual power as well.
Yeah.
And there are things that we can do, and we can mobilize and say, okay, there are some things that are policy right now that don't work for Black people. I'm going to call every day. I'm going to send an email every day to my legislator. I'm going to do this. And those are all the kind of things that I think will help in the situation. But in that next segment, I'll tell you one specifically that I think everybody ought to be doing.
No, we're in it, so you can go right.
Police brutality. I think police brutality, and to be more specific, the policy around use of force needs to be reviewed in every single police department. Everyone.
That's good.
So I would say, first of all, we need to demand information, and I think it's public knowledge. But we need to find out what are the terms, what are the what's the process of using force, all the procedures, all that stuff. And then as we've seen, we need to speak directly to that. We need to be calling our council people. We need to be calling the mayors. We need to be emailing and saying we need to have public policy reform on this. Yeah. The other thing is that I think we need to get at certain tables. So when it comes to most cities or municipalities have a citizens accountability review board, a citizens policing of the police. Wow. Most of the time, we don't even know that that's in place. We need to be at those tables, Black folk, because when it comes to policy changing, that's where a lot of times that's effective. So anyone, hey, how can I be on that? When my city council meets, what are y'all talking about? Because remember, they work for you. So I need to know. And sometimes your protest can be in a very vocal way. Y'all are wasting our tax dollars and time. One thing I'm thinking about doing is that when we get back from this coronavirus time, I'm going to take a Wednesday night and have Bible study. I'm going to take a night and bring the whole church to a city council meeting. Yeah. And we're going to sit in there and say, y'all not going to waste we ain't going to waste money allowing you all just to come up with things that are frivolous. If you're going to spend 2 hours talking about patching up a pothole, but not dealing with police reform, we have an issue. Those are the kind of things. And then when it comes to our involvement in church, we ought to be bringing that to our pastors. There ought to be ministries within the church that monitor what's going on legislatively. We ought to have people in our church right now, because again, when you talk about the voter situation, the mail-in ballot situation is so confusing right now.
Yes.
That most people are not familiar with it.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Absolute purposely. Absolutely. So you ought to have people in every church that have studied that thing, that know it, and that are saying, this is how it's done.
Right.
Those are the things that we can do. And I think that with our shouting, with our dancing, with our preaching, with our running, we have a fundamental responsibility to also know what's going on in the world around us. And the only reason why the police department here, I got to be careful how I say it. The only reason why there's going to be the shake up there is because they detained the wrong one. Now, there's a lot of people that get detained that don't have the stage of Pastor Tim. But I believe the Lord wanted me on pavement. Because Pastor Tim ain't going away. Yeah. He is going to walk through there, kicking every door open, saying no. And I'm saying, just like Pastor Tim, there are people that have power, strategy, thought, creativity. that you can do that, because we have to stop acting as if we are slaves to that. No, they work for us. If you pay taxes, you can demand certain things.
Yeah.
I love what you said. Well, Pastor, let me ask this question, then I'm gonna make my comment. Were you praying when you were on the ground?
No.
That's what was going through your mind.
I was praying. I thought he said something. I was trying to see. I thought he said something, but I couldn't see.
I prayed beforehand, and I'm always in a prayerful place, and I'm serious about that. That was something that I knew. I told the group that we were walking with, we're about to do something that is going to be a problem, because we're in a side of town that they don't play that. And I'll tell you, if you watch the video, when they there were so many things that they did that if you're paying attention to what's going on, you would have to think, I probably shouldn't do this with this many cameras around. But the fact that they grabbed me immediately and started to say, stop resisting, before I could do anything, stop resisting, which is a code word for excessive force. But if you'll notice on there, and my friends and I, we've joked about it, they were trying to leg sweep me. They were like kicking my ankles, trying to leg sweep me. And I'm not saying I'm the biggest guy, but
you were playing it like
you're right.
The rivers of the water, wasn't you?
Yeah. So I said, if you watch me on the video, I said, now I'll go down. And I got on my knee. And then that's when they shoved me down. But at that point, to answer your question, Matisa, I was still calling out for them to say no justice, no peace, and Breonna Taylor. Because I'm never gonna miss a moment. I'm never gonna miss the moment. Ever.
I love it.
I knew I was on TV. I knew I was on TV.
Wait, let me say the funniest thing. The funniest thing was the video I watched. I'm sure this young lady don't go to our church, but she was like, "That's my so-and-so pastor. Don't put your knee on his neck." But I was like, "Oh, okay." She was so passionate, but she was like, "Blankety blank, that's my pastor." I was like, "Okay, come on, pastor."
A lot of people, when I was detained, a lot of people showed up, and they weren't just members of Kingdom Fellowship. We had people that jumped in cars, dudes from the hood that jumped in cars and sped out there. And I think that's another reason why but again, I said this the other day, it was sort of the tale of two halves, and it shows the racism in policing. Absolutely. Because when they grabbed me, I was just another black guy. When they threw me down, I was another black guy. When they got me up and threw me in the back of the car, I was another black guy. But as this was live streaming, there were people in positions of power at the highest level that called and said, please get him out of there. Please stop.
We were making
when they came back, this is not a lie. When they came back, they were calling me Reverend Findley. They brought me water.
Stop.
They wanted to do a check to make sure I was okay. Matter of fact, I told them, even in the car, I was telling them what they were doing was so wrong. And the officer that was in the car started explaining to me how he agreed with the protesters, and racism is a problem in our country. Everything changed.
Well, I need you to say that on camera. Don't tell me that in the car. Say that on camera.
Did they bring you a chocolate cupcake?
What's that?
Did they bring you a chocolate cupcake?
They did not. Theresa bring me a chocolate cupcake.
I guess that's the inside joke.
Listen, they did not bring. Teresa's all no. That Theresa, Dana, pray for her. Just pray for her. No chocolate cupcakes.
But I think that's a great point, and we're going to kind of wrap up here. So we're going to ask you if you have any kind of closing words. But I do think that's a really, really, really great point, that who you were mattered when they knew who you were. That mattered. You as a black man didn't matter as much when they found out who you were and who you knew. And they should know, though. I mean, you're all over the city in leadership positions, but on that pavement, you were another black man.
Right.
So,
well, Matisa, they know now. I'm gonna tell you why. Because when I go into a store now, because I think what they're doing, they're trying to associate me with uprising. So I went in Target the other day, and I had someone, a young black lady, who knew who I was immediately, and she said, "Hey, Pastor Tim, appreciate what you did. Just letting you know, when you came in, they were on the lapel thing, the little microphones, saying, everyone be advised. We may have someone here that's connected to the looting." So I was getting all around Target. Yes. Wow. So they definitely know. And that's nothing that is, we have community organizers in Louisville who have told me that they get followed everywhere, that there are drones. I know for a fact that they watch my social media account.
I'm sure.
Wow.
So it's okay. I mean,
I was wondering why the covert sort of, people who know, but I was wondering why your messages were kind of, covert. And
I love them.
Yes, and I do it.
I'm gonna go for a walk today.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. But the other day when we went to Target, I put on there Myers, but we were never going to Myers. That was just to see. That was like in chess. It's called sacrificing your pawn. You put your pawn out there to force a move.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna be the guy that's just throwing stuff together that ain't
That's so good.
So they need to know, and I get a kick out of this. So
I was gonna say, you love it. You love it. Well, listen, we're so thankful that you've been here. Just in a couple of minutes, what would kind of be your closing thoughts, Pastor Tim?
Just everybody getting involved. Everybody caring. I think that's the big thing. We all do different things and we all can protest in different ways. Everybody is not the marching down the street person. Everybody's not, we all have different ways that we can do this. But I think collectively as Black people in this country and white people who understand what's going on and people of all colors, it's time for us now to attack these areas that we know are racist. Healthcare, education,
absolutely,
policing, the criminal justice system, white evangelicalism. All of these areas need people to speak out. They need people not to be hateful. We're Christian, we're saved. We still have to extend grace. I'm even in all of the anger that I have towards certain things, I'm still a man of God and I still believe in the power of the Holy Ghost. But I believe in that I have a responsibility to speak truth to power through my personality.
Yes.
And I think everyone has a responsibility to do that. And I would say to Black people, especially, let's become more knowledgeable of our history. Let's become more knowledgeable about what's going on. Let's break out of these bubbles and say, I can do something. I want to find out, learn where I come from, what I've dealt with, what my ancestors dealt with, so I can move forward.
That's really
absolutely good. Well, again, thank you so much, Pastor Tim. You are
Thanks, Pastor
ours. We love you. We're praying for you.
And I came to your defense, Matisse, when they was ganging up on you the other week. Because I
know
y'all not gonna gang up on Matisse like that.
I appreciate it.
It was Theresa and Dana, really. Well, you know the Lord.
No, I got your back too, Pastor. You're definitely one of my faves, and we appreciate you so much. Thanks, and you're welcome back to the table anytime.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Y'all do a great job. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Love you all.
He's the best.
He's so good. Wow.
He's the best.
That was really informative, and
I love that we spoke to somebody that's been involved to the point that he's been arrested. He has the insight though. That's what I love. Like he has the insight of what's up. And for me, like last week, I was so angry and upset, and I was like, what can I do? And I know we had a protest last night, a prayer protest, but if y'all didn't have prayer and it was just protest, I probably would have went. But no, I like the shirt you had. I pray and I protest. I love that. But for me, it's like, how do we deal with our day to day? Because I'm in a very, very predominant race community. And so I feel I don't have empathy for them, but like my neighbors are like, hey, how are you? Hey, Boomer's mom. They're all like, and I'm like, yeah, what's up? Like, yeah, what?
Lord Pepper. I'm
in the whole mood. But my thing is, like, you can't be disparaging towards, it's not everybody's fault, like not all of their entire race, but it's a problem that the entire country experiences racism, but they try to act like it's not there or that it's so much better. No, it's not.
Right. But I think, you know what? And I know we're about to get off in a few minutes.
Go ahead.
I did have a situation last night that happened with me with another nurse. And what she said was, I don't know what to say. Right. And so she was in the room when the man was talking. And I said, well, that's the problem. You allow him to continue to talk. Did you agree with him? She said, yeah. I said, did you agree with him? She said, no. I said, even if you don't have the words, because again, I can't articulate like the proper way, the politically correct way. Because again, I'm gonna tell you off. But I told her, I said, cut him off. Let him know what you're saying is not right.
There you go.
Like, That makes sense. And I was like, yeah. I said, don't allow him to continue to talk like that if you don't agree. Now, if you agree, it's a different story. But if you don't agree, cut him off, shut him down. You might not know the right words or the history, but shut them down. And I think that's how it starts.
Yes. I mean, it reminds me of, y'all remember when John McCain and President Obama were competing against each other for the presidency, and John McCain is at this forum and he's at this political rally, and this woman gets the microphone and she's like, Obama is an Arab, you know, that alone, but Obama is an Arab and he's this and he's that. And John McCain takes the mic from her. This is his opponent. He takes the mic from her and says, no, ma'am. He said, I don't agree with President Obama politically,
but I'm not going to listen.
Decent, God-fearing American. And that to me is an example of what we should see people doing. You know, you don't have to know all the history to know that that's the wrong, you know, thing to say. And so I agree with you, Julia, speaking up and making people
accountable.
And that's what I encourage my friends now. Like, even the ones on social media, I don't know what to say, Joy. Just speak up when you see something that you know that's not right.
Yeah.
If you don't agree with it. Just
because I need to see what side of the fence you're on. So open your mouth. Like, what'd you say? Oh, okay. All right. That hair is say something crazy to me.
I was this close.
I'm like, I look crazy. Y'all gonna what? Somebody gonna say something to me?
I said, I'm so happy she didn't go. I was like, don't go, Theresa. I wanted her to go, but I was like, no, don't go.
But I was ready. I was ready.
But you know what? I'll tell you, I've been in some protests that were smaller.
Yeah.
But the protest yesterday, it inspired me. It motivated me to be with. There was probably about 100 church people. Like we were all walking together. And as we were walking, I'm talking about white people, black people. There's this really tall white guy who had a shirt on that said "Racism sucks," and I love that. And as we were walking, all these cars would be honking their horns, and we would put our fist up, and they would, you know, and then we would pray and kneel, and we were praying for police officers. We were praying for National Guardsmen. It was surreal. I mean, I so appreciated it.
Matissa, were you kneeling, or you weren't able to kneel because you had your bougie skirt?
Now with that skirt on, she probably had a bougie skirt.
I did kneel, and I had the marks in my knees. But I was praying to God that they would.
You were praying. I heard you. You were praying, baby.
That's so funny. But you know what I love? I love seeing that there are companies speaking out against this racism.
Absolutely.
I went on Apple the other day to look for an iPad I'm gonna purchase, and when I opened up their website, I don't know if you can see this. This is what comes up on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love it.
Nickelodeon has.
It's the whole first page of their website.
I love it.
Nickelodeon, the kids network, they have something.
Oh, that's cool.
I love that.
Love it.
Mark said about Candace Owens.
I will talk about her. Have you heard anything she said?
No.
I wouldn't watch it because I didn't want to give her no lie. I didn't want to give her another.
I don't like to put foolishness in my spirit. So tell me what happened.
I can't do it.
I did not listen to what she said about George Floyd. What I heard was, I heard people talking about the fact that in her latest video, she was saying that George Floyd is not a hero, and went down a list of all of the behaviors and activities that he had pre-knee in his neck asphyxia. I don't even want to give her a platform. It's unfortunate.
I can't, y'all.
I saw a couple of people who literally watched it. These are Black women, watched it and said, I never thought about it that way. She's right.
What?
I'm going to go back to her inbox very soon. But I don't even want to give her a platform because she is an opportunist. And what she says is disgusting.
It's disgusting.
Yes.
So
I my spirit.
Listen, the singer, Eddie James, I just had to laugh. I literally just had to laugh.
So tell the people what that was about, Joya.
So he's a singer, he's gospel artist, right? Yeah, he's a gospel artist. He's doing a video and he's crying. Guys, we have to have unity. There are white people dying. This is the Black guy. They are police officers dying. We have to show the love of God. Didn't say one thing about George. They didn't say one thing about the Black people, what we've been going through. I just had to laugh. Like, I literally had to laugh. It was embarrassing. Just to say the least, I was embarrassed.
It was embarrassing.
It was embarrassing.
No,
I think some people say stupid stuff just because they don't know any better. And it's just like, please stop talking.
Somebody get them. Where are your parents? That's what I want to say, Theresa. Where are your parents?
Right.
Where are your parents?
Right.
You're a grown man, right? Yeah. Well, there's so much that we could talk about. I want to give us all a final word, but I've really enjoyed the show. I'm grateful that Pastor Tim was on, and I'm grateful that we could all experience this together, because the reality is we all have different experiences and thoughts, but we have the common experience of being Black women in this country, right? And loving Black men in this country. And so there's a lot that it's layered. It's not as simple as black and white. It's layered, and it's layered from a number of years. But I'm really grateful to Mark and YLC TV for giving us this platform, so that we can share our voices. So let's just we'll go Joya, Theresa, and then Dana. What's your final word?
I have I know that a change is going to come. I feel inspired. I'm so happy. Again, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Pastor Findley. I got my books, so I'm about to go educate myself, so that I don't just pop off, that I can pop off and tell them facts while I'm
right. I love that. I love the fact that we had Pastor Tim as well, because it was just enlightening to hear a different perspective from a leader and their strategic opportunity to make an impact. It's not just like we're not going to run ramshot. I'm going to where you are. I'm going to come to your intersection and make you stop and hear my voice. And the interruption of the day, I'm going to interrupt you. You will not have peace as long as we don't have justice. And so I'm all about no justice. Y'all don't get no peace. And I'll tell you this one little thing, and this is hateful, but I live in a condo and I have neighbors. So we all kind of agree that after 9-10, you don't make loud noise or whatever. 11 o'clock last night, I was vacuuming. Nothing.
Moving stuff. Moving stuff. Had boomer barking.
But it was like I'm trying to, be gentle around everybody that I talk to, but I can't go out. I just can't go out because my overall response is, you guys are wrong. It might not be you, but y'all wrong. Mm-hmm. So I need you downtown marching with everybody else. And when you're not,
Theresa, turn on a cartoon and stop watching Louis Farrakhan, please. I beg.
Right. Text me. I'm gonna send you the video. Louis Farrakhan was like, "We'll set this country up."
Oh Lord! Oh Lord!
They'll give it to us.
Hey, text me.
Dana, one word from you.
I would definitely say educate yourselves. Everybody get involved. Everybody has some way to get involved. And throughout the course of the show, we've given you several opportunities to participate. And if your way of protesting is vacuuming at 11 o'clock at night against the noise ordinance, vacuum on.
Yes.
Make sure you fill in those census reports. Make sure you study legislation and not just the people who are being placed on the ballots. Really inform yourself. Read some of the resources that I got some book purchases to make myself, but just make sure that you're educated and don't just be silent.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
And I would just say lastly, we don't want this to be a moment. We want it to be a movement. We don't want the protest to end and everything to go back to the way it was before. We want to keep it going. So as everyone has said, educate ourselves and call our legislators, vote, do all of those things. And if we continue knocking down and dismantling these systems, we will have all things new. See you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
See you next week. Lord's will.
I know, Lord's will.